I think so. Vignesh is the only student over here.
Vignesh is there.
Yeah, Vignesh, I would
Yes,
really
ma'am.
want you to underline something if you are reading from a hard copy, or any questions that you feel like you please ask me at that very moment.
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you so much. As we work on SLV gain momentum, Professor Dhawan introduced the system of reviewing progress with the entire team involved in the project. Professor Dhawan was a man with a mission. He would effortlessly pull together all the loose ends to make work move smoothly. At VSC, the review meetings presided over by Professor Dhawan used to be considered major events. He was a true captain of the ISRO ship, a commander, navigator, housekeeper, all rolled into one. Yet, he never pretended to know more than he did. Instead, when something appeared ambiguous, he would ask questions and discuss his doubts frankly. I remember him as a leader for whom to lead with a firm but fair hand was a moral compulsion. His mind used to be very firm once it had been decided on any issue. But before taking a decision, it would it used to be like a clay, open to impressions until the final molding. Then the decisions would be popped into the potter's oven for glazing, never failing to emerge hard and tough, resistant and enduring. I had the privilege of spending great deal of time with Professor Dhawan. He could hold the listener enthralled because of his logical, intellectual acumen he could bring to bear on his analysis of any subject. He had an unusual combination of degrees, a BSc in mathematics and physics, an MA in English literature, B in mechanical engineering, MS in aeronautical engineering, followed by a PhD in aeronautics and mathematics from California Institute of Technology, Caltech in USA. Intellectual debates with him were very stimulating and could always mentally energize me and my team members. I find I found him full of optimism and compassion. Although he often judged himself harshly, with no allowances or excuses, he was generous to a fault when it came to others. Professor Dhawan used to sternly pronounce his judgments and then pardon the contrary guilty parties. In 1975, ISRO became a government body. An ISRO council was formed consisting of directors from different work centers and senior officers in the Department of Space, DOS. This provided a symbolic link as well as a forum for participative management between the DOS, which had the governmental powers, and the centers which would execute the jobs. In a traditional parlance of government departments, ISRO centers would have been subordinate units or attached offices. But such words were never spoken either at ISRO or DOS. Participative management, which calls for active interaction between those who wield administrative powers and executing agencies, was a novel feature of ISRO management that would go a long way in Indian R&D organizations. The new setup brought me in contact with T.N. Seshan, the Joint Secretary in the DOS. Till then, I had latent reservation about bureaucrats. So I was not very comfortable when I saw Seshan participating in a SLV3 management board meeting. But soon it changed to admiration for Seshan, who would meticulously go through the agenda and always come for the meetings prepared. He used to kindle the minds of scientists and his tremendous analytical capability. The first 3 years of SLV project was the period for the revelation of many fascinating mysteries of science. Being human, ignorance has always been with us and always will be. What was new was my awareness of it, my awakening to its fathomless dimensions. I used to erroneously suppose that the function of science was to explain everything, and the unexplained phenomena were the province of people like my father and Lakshman Sastri. However, I always refrained from discussing these matters with any of my scientist colleagues, fearing that it would threaten the hegemony of their meticulously formed views. Gradually, I became aware of the difference between science and technology, between research and development. Science is inherently open ended and exploratory. Development is a closed loop. Mistakes are imperative in development and are made every day. But each mistake is used for modification, upgradation, or betterment. Probably the creator created engineers to make scientists achieve more. For each time, scientists come up with a thoroughly researched and fully comprehended solution. Engineers show them yet another liminal, yet one more possibility. I cautioned my team against becoming scientists. Science is a passion, a never ending voyage into promises and possibilities. We had only limited time and limited funds, are making the SLV dependent upon our awareness of our own limits. I preferred existing workable solutions, which would be the best options. Nothing that is new comes into time bound projects without its own problem. In my opinion, a project leader should always work with proven technologies in most of the systems as far as possible and experiment only from multiple resources. Experience. The SLV 3 project had been formulated in such a way that the major technology work centers, both at VSSC and at SHAR, could handle propellant production, motor testing, rocket motor testing, and launch of any large diameter rocket. As participants in the SLV 3 project, we set three milestones for ourselves: development and flight qualification of all subsystems through sounding rockets by 1975, suborbital flights by 1976, and the final orbital flight in 1978. The work tempo had picked up now, and the atmosphere was charged with excitement. Wherever I went, our teams had something interesting to show me. A large number of things were being done for the first time in the country, and the ground level technicians had no prior exposure to this kind of work. I saw new performance dimensions growing, growing among my team members. Performance dimensions are factors that lead to creation. They go beyond competencies such as skills and knowledge of the individual. Performance dimensions are broader and deeper than what a person must know and be able to do in order to function well in his or her job. They include attitudes, values and character traits. They exist at various levels of human personality. At the behavioral level, at the outermost ring of the tree, we can observe skills and measure knowledge. Social roles and self image dimensions are found at the intermediate level. Motives and traits exist at the innermost or core level. If we can identify those performance dimensions which are not which are most highly correlated with job success, we can put them together to form a blueprint for outstanding performances in both thought and action. Although SLV 3 was still in the future, its subsystems were being completed. In June 1974, we used the Centaur sounding rocket launch to test some of our critical systems. A scaled down heat shield of SLV, rate gyro unit, and vehicle attitude programmer were integrated into the Centaur rocket. The three systems involved wide ranging expertise, composite materials, controlled control engineering, and software. None of them ever had having been tried before in the country. The test was a complete success. Until then, the Indian space program had not gone beyond sounding rockets, and even knowledgeable people were not ready to see and acknowledge its efforts as anything more serious than fiddling around with meteorological instruments. For the first time, we inspired the confidence of the nation. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi told Parliament on July 24th, 1974, the development and fabrication of relevant technologies, subsystems, and hardware to make India's first satellite launch vehicle are progressing satisfactorily. A number of industries are engaged in fabrication of components. The first orbital flight by India is scheduled to take place in 1978. Like any other act of creation, the creation of SLV-3 also had its painful moments. One day, when my team and I were totally engrossed in the preparation of the static test of the first stage motor, the news of a death in the family reached me. My brother in law and mentor, Janab Ahmad Jalaluddin, was no more. For a couple of minutes, I was immobilized. I could not think, could not feel anything. When I could focus on my surroundings once more and attempted to participate in the work, I found myself talking incoherently, and then I realized that with Jalaluddin, a part of me had passed away too. A vision of my childhood reappeared before me. Evening walks around the Rameshwaram temple, shining sand and dancing tides in the moonlight, stars looking down from an unlit sky on a new moon night, Jalaluddin showing me the horizon sinking into the sea, arranging money for my books, and seeing me off at Santa Cruz Airport. I felt I had been thrown into a whirlpool of time and space. My father, by now more than 100 years old, pallbearer for his son in law, who had been half his age, the bereft soul of my sister Zohara, her wounds from the loss of her 4-year-old son, still raw, these images came before my eyes in a blur, too terrible for me to comprehend. I leaned on the assembly jig, composed myself, and left a few instructions with Dr. S. Srinivasan, Deputy Project Director, to carry on with the work in my absence. Traveling overnight in a combination of district buses, I reached Rameshwaram only the next day. During this time, I did my best to free myself from the very past which appeared to have come to an end with Jalaluddin. But the moment I reached my house, grief assailed me afresh. I had no words for Zora or for my niece Mehboob, both of whom were crying uncontrollably. I had no tears to shed. I had no tears to shed. We sorrowfully put Jalaluddin's body to rest. My father held my hands for a long time. There were no tears in his eyes either. Do you not see, Abul, how how the Lord lengthens the shadows? Had it been his will, he could have made them constant. But he makes sun their guide. Little by little, he shortens them. It is he who has made the night a mantle for you and sleep a rest. Jalaluddin has gone into a long sleep, a dreamless sleep, a complete rest of all his beings with simple unconsciousness. Nothing will befall us except what Allah has ordained. He is our guardian. In Allah, my son, put your trust. He slowly closed his wrinkled eyelids and went into a trance like state. Death has never frightened me. After all, everyone has to go one day. But perhaps Jalaluddin went a little too early, a little too soon. I could not bring myself to stay long at home. I felt my the whole of my inner self drowning in a sort of anxious agitation and inner conflicts between my personal and professional life. For many days back in Tumba, I felt a sense of futility I had never known before about everything I was doing. I had long talks with Professor Dhawan. He told me my progress on SLV project would bring me solace. The confusion would first lessen and would later pass away altogether. He drew my attention to the wonders of technology and its achievement. Gradually, the hardware began emerging from the drawing boards. Sasi Kumar built a very effective network of fabrication work centers. Within days of getting component drawing, he would embark on the fabrication with what was available. Nambudri and Pillai were spending their days and nights at the propulsion laboratory developing four rocket motors simultaneously. MSR Dev and Sandlas drew up meticulous plans for mechanical and electrical integration of the vehicle. Madhvan Nair and Murthy examined the systems developed by VSSC Electronic Laboratories and engineered them into the flight subsystems where it was possible. US Singh brought up the first launch ground system compromising of telemetry, telecommand, and radar. He also chalked out a detailed work plan with Shar for flight trials. Dr. Sundarajan closely monitored mission objectives and concurrently updated the systems. Dr. Srinivasan, a competent launch vehicle designer, discharged all my complementary and supplementary functions at the SLV Duke, Deputy Project Director. He noticed what I had overlooked, heard the points I failed to listen, and suggested possibilities that I had not so much visualized. I think so. I would stop for a second over here. Vignesh, would you like to throw some light on the piece I have read?
Ma'am, like I really loved the way that he's saying that we need to balance our personal loss with our responsibility in our professional life, ma'am.
Can you
Actually,
give one?
whenever
Can you give one quote where he says this from the topic?
ma'am quote, uh,
I'll help you. See where his father says that the shadows, it is a paradox which has been given, or a simile also, if you would say, that the shadows are never constant, na? They keep on increasing and decreasing.
sorry, ma'am.
The shadows, where Abul Kalam's father tells him that the shadows are there, they keep on increasing and decreasing. They are not constant.
Uh, yes, ma'am.
Yes. This is something which we fail to realize. And above also, when he says that uh, when we ourselves understand that, yes, this is my weak point, this is my plus point, that is the best thing that we can learn. At the behavioral level, performance dimensions, they are at different levels. So if we know where we are wrong, or when we understand this process, that yes, when we know that where are we short, wherever we have our shortfalls, it is really very helpful. And one person I would ask you about is Mr. Sheshan. Do you know anything about him?
No, ma'am. I'm reading his name first time, ma'am.
Yes. T.N. Sheshan was the very famous election commissioner who brought in lot of changes. He fought with the government when the government was to be formed. Just read this.
Okay.
read about him. He's a very impressive personality. I was really very happy to see his name over here. And Dr. Kalam also has said that he was a man of who used to come prepared for the meetings. Like everything, every minutest of the details, where beforehand only he would prepare and then he could come. So this is something really very good. I'm really very happy to hear his name. Mr. T.N. Session, I think so. We don't know even the present election commissioner of India, but he was a very famous election commissioner of India. Anything you want to say more, or shall I continue?
Continue, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I hope so. What I'm reading, you can understand.
Yes, ma'am. I can understand.
I'm not
I'm
going too
understanding.
fast or too slow.
No, ma'am.
Okay,
It's correct.
thank you. We learned the hard way that the biggest problem of project management is to achieve a regular and efficient interfacing between the different individuals and work centers. Hard work can be set at naught in the absence of proper coordination. I had the fortune of having Y.S. Rajan from the ISRO headquarters as my friend in those times. Rajan was and is a universal friend. His friendship embraced with equal warmth turners, fitters, electricians, and drivers, as well as scientists, engineers, contractors, and bureaucrats. Today, when the press call me the welder of people, I attribute this to Rajan. His close interaction with different work centers created such a harmony in SLB affairs that the fine threads of individual efforts were woven into the mighty fabric of great strength. In 1976, my father passed away. He had been in poor health for quite some time due to his advanced age. The death of Jalaluddin had also taken a toll on his health and spirit. He had also lost his desire to live, as though after seeing Jalaluddin return to his divine source, he too became eager to return to his. Whenever I learnt about my father's indifferent health, I would visit Rameswaram with a good city doctor. Every time I did so, he would chide me away for my unnecessary concern and lecture me on the expenses incurred on the doctor. Your visit is enough for me to get well. Why bring a doctor and spend money on his fees? He would ask. This time, he had gone beyond his capabilities of any doctor, care, or money. My father, Janaluddin, who had lived on Rameswaram Island for 102 years, had passed away, leaving behind 15 grandchildren and one great grandson. He had led an exemplary life. Sitting alone on the night after the burial, I remember a written poem on the death of Yeats by his friend Auden, and felt as if it was written for my father. Earth, receive an honored guest. William Yeats is laid to rest. In the prison of his days, teach the free man how to praise. In worldly terms, it was the death of just another old man. No public mourning was organized. No flags were lowered to half mast. No newspaper carried an obituary for him. He was not a politician, a scholar, or a businessman. He was a plain and transparent man. My father pursued the supreme value, the good. He, his life inspired the growth of all that was benign and angelic, wise and noble. My father had always reminded me of the legendary Abu Ben Adam, who, waking one night from a deep dream of peace, saw an angel writing in a book of gold the names of those who love the Lord. Abu asked the angel if his own name was on the list. The angel replied in the negative. Disappointed but still cheerful, Abu said, write my name down as one that loves his fellow men. The angel wrote and vanished. The next night it came again with the great awakening light. and showed the names of those whom the love of God had blessed, and Abu's name was the first on the list. I sat for a long time with my mother but could not speak. She blessed me in a choked voice. When I took leave of her to return to Tumba, she knew that she was not to leave the house of her husband, of which she was the custodian, and I was not to live with her there. Both of us had to live out our own destinies. Was I too stubborn, or was I excessively preoccupied with the SLV? Should not I have forgotten for a while my own affairs in order to listen to her? I regretfully realized this only when she passed away soon afterwards. With SLV-3 Apogee rocket developed as a common upper stage with diamond, scheduled to be flight tested in France, was mired in a series of knotty problems. I had to rush to France to sort them out. Before I could depart, late in the afternoon, I was informed that my mother had passed away. I took the first available bus to Nagarcoil. From there, I traveled to Rameshwaram, spending the spending a whole night in the train and performed the last rites the next morning. Both the people who had formed me had left for their heavenly abode. They departed and reached the end of their journey. The rest of us had to continue walking the weary road of and life had to go on. I prayed in the mosque my father had once taken me to every evening. I told him that my mother have lived longer in the world without the care and love of her husband and therefore preferred to join him. I begged his forgiveness. They carried out the task I designed for them with great care, dedication, and honesty and came back to me. Why are you mourning their day of accomplishment? Concentrate on the assignments that lie before you and proclaim my glory through your deeds. Nobody had said these words, but I heard them loud and clear. An inspiring aphorism in the Quran on the passing away of souls filled my mind. Your wealth and children are the only temptation, whereas Allah with Him is an eternal award. I came out of the mosque with my mind at peace and proceeded to the railway station. I always remember that when the call for namaz sounded, our home would transform into a small mosque. My father and mother leading, and their children and grandchildren following. The next morning, I was back at Tumba, physically exhausted, emotionally shattered, but determined to fulfill our ambition of flying an Indian rocket motor on foreign soil. On my return from France, after successfully testing SLV-3 Apogee motor, Dr. Brahma Prakash informed me one day about the arrival of Werner von Braun. Everybody working in the rocketry knows of von Braun, who made lethal V-2 missiles that devastated London in the Second World War. In the final stages of war, von Braun was captured by the Allied forces. As a tribute to his genius, von Braun was given a top position in the rocketry programming at NASA. Working for the US Army, von Braun produced the landmark Jupiter missile, which was the first IRBM with a 3,000-kilometer range. When I was asked by Dr. Brahma Prakash to receive von Braun at Madras and escort him to Tumba, I was naturally excited. The V-2 missile, an abbreviation of the German word Verge, Vergeltungswaffe, was by the far the greatest single achievement in the history of rockets and missiles. I was the culmination of the efforts made by von Braun and his team in the VFR Space Society for Space Flight in the 1920s. What had begun as a civilian effort soon became an official army one. and von Braun became the technical director of the German missile laboratory at Kummersdorf. The first V-2 missile was first tested unsuccessfully in June 1942. It toppled over onto its side and exploded. But on 16th August 1942, it became the first missile to exceed the speed of sound. Under the supervision of von Braun, more than 10,000 V-2 missiles were produced between April and October 1944 at the gigantic underground production unit near Nordhausen in Germany. That I would be traveling with this man, a scientist, a designer, a production engineer, an administrator, a technology manager, all rolled into one. What more could I have asked for? We flew into the Avro aircraft, which took around 90 minutes from Madras to Trivandrum. Von Braun asked me about our work and listened as if he was just another student of rocketry. I never expected the father of modern rocketry to be so humble, receptive, and encouraging. He made me feel comfortable right through the flight. It was so hard to imagine that I was talking to a giant of missile system as he was so self-effacing. He observed that the length to diameter LD ratio of SLV3, which was designed to be 22, was on the higher side and cautioned me about the aeroelastic problems which must be avoided during flight. Having spent a major part of his working life in Germany, how did he feel in America? I asked this of von Braun, who had become a cult figure in the States after creating the Saturn rocket in the Apollo mission, which put man on the moon. America is a country of great possibilities, but they look upon everything un American with suspicion and contempt. They suffer from the deep rooted NIH, not invented here complex, and look down on alien technologies. If you want to do anything in rocketry, do it yourself. Von Braun advised me. He commented, SLV3 is a genuine Indian design and you may be having your own troubles. But you should always remember that we don't just build on successes, we also build on failures. On the topic of inevitable hard work that goes with rocket development and the degree of commitment involved, he smiled and said with a glint of mischief in his eyes, hard work is not enough in rocketry. It is not a sport where mere hard work can fetch you honors. Here, not only do you have to have a goal, but you have to have strategies to achieve it as fast as possible. Total commitment is not just hard work, it is total involvement. Building a rock wall is backbreaking work. There are some people who build rock walls all their lives. And when they die, they are miles of there are miles of walls, mute testimonials to how hard those people had worked. He continued, but there are other men who, while placing one rock on the top of another, have a vision in their mind, a goal. It may be a terrace with roses climbing over the rock walls and chairs set out for lazy summer days, or the rock which or the rock wall may enclose the apple orchard or mark a boundary. When they finish, they have more than a wall. It is the goal that makes the difference. Do not make rocketry your profession, your livelihood. Make it your religion, your mission. Did I see something of Professor Vikram Sarabhai in Von Braun? It made me happy to think so. With three deaths in the family in as many successive years, I needed total commitment to my work in order to keep performing. I wanted to throw all my being into the creation of the SLV. I felt as if I had discovered the path I was meant to follow. God's mission for me and my purpose on his earth. During this period, it was though I had pushed a hold button. No badminton in the evenings, no more weekends or holidays, no family, no relations, not even any friends outside the SLV circle. To succeed in your mission, you must have single minded devotion to your goal. Individuals like myself are often called workaholics. I question this term because that implies a pathological condition or an illness. If I do that which I desire more than anything else in the world and which makes me happy, such work can never be an aberration. Words from the 26th Slam come to my mind while I work. Examine, O Lord, and prove me. Total commitment is a crucial quality for those who want to reach the very top of their profession. The desire to work at optimum capacity leaves hardly any room for anything else. I have had people with me who would scoff at the 40 hours a week job they were being paid for. I have known others who used to work 60, 80, or even 100 hours a week because they found their work exciting and rewarding. Total commitment is the common denominator among all successful men and women. Are you able to manage the stresses you encounter in your life? The difference between an energetic and a confused person is the difference in the minds, in the way their minds handle their experiences. Man needs his difficulties because they are necessary to enjoy success. All of us carry some sort of super intelligence within us. Let it be stimulated to enable us to examine our deepest thoughts, desires, and beliefs. Once you have done this, charge yourself as it if were with your commitment to your work. You also need good health and boundless energy. Climbing to the top demands strength, whether to the top of Mount Everest or to the top of your career. People are born with energy reserves, and the one who tries first burns out easily will do well to reorganize his or her life at the earliest. In 1979, a six-member team was preparing the flight version of a complex second stage control system for the static test and evaluation. The team was in a countdown mode at T 15 minutes, 15 minutes before the test. One of the 12 walls did not respond during checkout. Anxiety drove the members of the team to the test site to look into the problem. Suddenly, the oxidizer tank, filled with red fuming nitric acid, RFNA, burst, causing severe acid burns to the team members. It was a very traumatic experience to see the suffering of the injured. Kurup and I rushed to the Trivandrum Medical College Hospital and begged to have our colleagues admitted, as six beds were not available in the hospital at that point of time. Siva Ramakrishnan Nair was one among the six persons injured. The acid had burned his body at number of places. By the time he got a bed in the hospital, he was in the severe pain. I kept vigil at his bedside. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, Sivarama Krishnan regained consciousness. His first words expressed regret over the mishap and assured me that he would make up the slippage in schedules caused by the accident. His sincerity and optimism, even in the midst of such severe pain, impressed me deeply. Men like Siva Ramakrishnan are a breed apart. They are the strivers, always reaching higher than the last time. And with their social and family life well welded into their dreams. They find the rewards of their drive overwhelming the inherent joy of being in flow. This event greatly enhanced my confidence in my team, a team that would stand like a rock in the success and failure. I use I have used the word flow at many places without really elaborating its meaning. What is a flow and what are these joys? I could call them moments of magic. I see an analogy between these moments and the high that you experience when you play badminton or go jogging. Flow is a sensation, an experience when we act with total involvement. During flow, follows action according to an internal logic that seems to need no conscious intervention on the part of the worker. There is no hurry. There are no distracting demands on one's attention. The past and the future disappear. So, does the distinction between self and the activity? We had all we had all come under the current of the SLV flow. Although we were working very hard, we were very relaxed, energetic, and deep and fresh. How did it happen? Who had created this flow? Perhaps it was a meaningful organization of the purposes we sought to achieve. We would identify the broadest possible purpose level and then work toward developing a feasible target solution from a variety of alternatives. It was this working backwards to develop a creative change in the problem solution that used to put us in flow. When SLV3 hardware started emerging, our ability to concentrate increased markedly. I felt a tremendous surge of confidence in complete control over myself and over SLV3 project. Flow is a byproduct of controlled creativity. The first requirement is to work as hard as you can at something that represents a challenge and is approved by your heart. It may not be an overwhelming challenge, but one that stretches you a little, something that makes you realize that you are performing a task better today than you did yesterday, or the last time you tried to do it. Another prerequisite for being in flow is the availability of a significant span of uninterrupted time. In my experience, it is difficult to switch into the flow state in less than half an hour, and it is almost impossible if you are bedeviled by interruptions. Is it possible to switch yourself into flow by using some sort of a conditioning device in much the same way that we condition ourselves to learn effectively? The answer is yes. And the secret to analyze previous occasions when you have been in flow, because each person has his or her unique natural frequency which responds to a particular stimulus. You alone can identify the common denominator in your case. Once you have isolated this common denominator, you can set the stage for flow. I have experienced this state many times, almost every day of the SLV mission. There have been days in the laboratory where, when I have looked up to find the laboratory empty and realized that it was way past the quitting time. On other days, my team members and I would have been so caught up in the work that lunch hour slipped by without our even being conscious that we were hungry. Analyzing such occasions in retrospect, I find them similar in the sense that this flow was experienced when the project was nearing completion or when the project had reached that phase when all the necessary data had been gathered and we were ready to start summing up the problem, outlining the demands made by conflicting criteria and various positions presented by opposing interests and making our recommendations for action. I also realized that this tended to happen on the days that were relatively quiet in the office. No crises or meetings. Such spells increased steadily in frequency, and the SLV3 dream was finally realized in the middle of 1979. I think so. We should stop here, Vignesh, and discuss. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you there, Vignesh? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Three things I would like to throw light on. First thing, uh, the mental state of Dr. Kalam after losing both of his parents. Second thing, about the flow that he has mentioned. And third thing, about me. So please.
Ma'am, first thing is like a mental state of Kalam, ma'am.
First thing is what was the mental state? Because he lost is both the parents in a very short span of time.
Yes, ma'am. Like
And when he was doing a very important project, the SLV3 had to be tested in France at that time.
ma'am, yes, ma'am. Like well, firstly, it was he became very sorrow in his life, and he was very lone. But but still, he wanted to be very strong, be in his own soul, and like and yes, though he struggled to balance that personal loss with the professional duties. Like he mentioned that he experienced self doubt, and like he was in trouble between family responsibilities and his work ambitions. But despite of all these things, like he found motivation in his duty. uh, 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 and and he shown some persistence and determination to complete his duties, ma'am. Like whether it's completing the testing of the personal motors, like that. And he also inspired by the Von Braun, ma'am.
Yes.
He also learn from him in this tough times. He also acted as an inspiration for him, ma'am. And when it comes to the flow, ma'am, like so flow is very important in our life, because there is always different phases, different categories we can divide our life. Like first is our personal growth, and second is our work, and the third is the commitment to our work or commitment to personal life, whatever it is. So we need to understand the challenges and how important such challenges in becoming successful in life. And also mention that the total commitment will help us to succeed, ma'am. Not a bit, not a partial success, but the total commitment is very important for becoming success. And also like continuous learnings are also very important. Yes,
Have
ma'am,
you
that's it.
have you ever experienced the flow?
Flow. No, ma'am.
You love cricket?
Yes, ma'am, I love cricket.
So when we are watching the match, do we remember that we have to eat food?
No, sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Majorly, it's no. When you are watching a cricket match, you cannot, especially when it is a match against India and Pakistan. So, do we remember some important person is calling? Then also, we are not ready to answer that call. No?
Yes, ma'am.
That
That's
is
true.
also a state of flow. That is also a
Okay.
state of flow where we forget what is happening around our surroundings. Even though that is not related to our work, definitely, but definitely that is also a state of flow.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Kanti ma'am, can we close the meeting? I think so. We are done. I hope so. Whatever I read, Vignesh, you could understand easily. It
Ma'am, I
wasn't.
could understand very. Ma'am.
Thank you so much. I think so. Kanti ma'am has left. Good night.
Good night, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. See you tomorrow.